Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up for the week ending Saturday, June 28th. Last week, I finished a number of big books that I was working on throughout the month of June, and couple of them that I had been working on even before that. So this was just kind of a little week in between the June events and the July events. So I finished one book and I started on two others that I will be continuing into July. The first book that I finished this week was John Steinbeck's Travels with Charley in Search of America. And I wanted to read this in between the two giant books of Steinbeck that we're reading for Summer of Steinbeck. Last week I talked about Grapes of Wrath, which was our reading for the month of June, and I had finished that. And now in July we're reading the next big one, East of Eden. This will also be a reread for me, but I read it so long ago that it really feels like I'm going to be coming at this with, for the first time, and certainly with new eyes. I think I was in my early 20s when I last read it, and it's not a book that I ever taught, whereas Grapes of Wrath was a book that I read many times because I used to teach it. After the heaviness of Grapes of Wrath and before jumping into East of Eden, I felt like I needed something a little bit lighter, and that's why I chose Travels with Charley in Search of America. And I don't know how it is that I had never read this book before. It was really a delightful read. This is the description of, or the travel log of, John Steinbeck's 1960 road trip across the country that he took with Charley, his standard French poodle. They traveled from New York up the eastern seaboard to Maine, across the border to the Pacific Northwest, down into Steinbeck's native Salinas Valley, California, across Texas, through the deep South, and back up to New York again in a pickup truck fitted with a camper. He named his vehicle Rocinante after Don Quixote's horse. He recounts his conversations with people that he met along the way and his impressions. He records his impressions of a changing country and its people, and also his own awareness of his aging. And, he was growing ill by this time, and there's some awareness of that in the book as well. There has been, since the book's publication in 1962, a great deal of, I don't know if I'd call it controversy, but there's been a lot of discussion about whether this should really be called a travel log, whether it really is nonfiction, or whether it's just another novel, but told in Steinbeck's own first-person voice. A lot of people have tried to make a lot of their own, I guess, fame on their discovering the numerous ways that this could not really be a non-fictional account of his trip. There are people who have published extensive research trying to prove that things in this book never really happened, or certainly didn't happen the way Steinbeck says they did. I find this kind of literary criticism, this sort of gotcha kind of literary criticism, to be sort of sad. I think that kind of literary discussion is basically meant to, show the critic's cleverness and doesn't really add a whole lot to the discussion. I read a couple of essays, where people just went point by point through the book to show that Steinbeck made stuff up or that he simply embellished things. And I think that kind of writing kind of misses the point of what Steinbeck was really doing here. Instead, I kind of like the take that English professor and critic Jay Perini takes on this book. Perini is a professor at my alma mater, and he's also one of the most noted biographers of Steinbeck. He was asked to write the introduction to the 50th anniversary of Travels with Charley, which was published in 2012. And I'm just going to read Perini's take on this issue, because this kind of spoke to me. This, I think, is what's really important about the book. So this is Jay Perini. He said, "Indeed, it would be a mistake to take this travel log too literally, as Steinbeck was, at heart, a novelist, and he added countless touches, changing the sequence of events, elaborating on scenes, inventing dialogue, that one associates more with fiction than nonfiction. It should be kept in mind when reading this travelogue that Steinbeck took liberties with the facts, inventing freely when it served his purposes, using everything in the arsenal of the novelist to make this book a readable, vivid narrative. The book remains true in the way all good novels or narratives are true. That is, it provides an aesthetic vision of America at a certain time. The evocation of its people and places stay forever in the mind, and Steinbeck's understanding of his country at this tipping point in its history was nothing short of extraordinary. It reflects his decades of observation and the years spent in honing his craft. That, I think, gets at the heart of what is really going on in this beautiful book. And now we are on to East of Eden, which I think I'm going to actually start this weekend, a little bit before July 1, because I'm just in between stuff right now. I also started this week Heather Cox Richardson's 2023 book, Democracy Awakening, Notes on the State of America. I've been following Heather Cox Richardson for several years now. She is a professor of history at Boston College. She writes a newsletter entitled Letters from an American, and she also posts on YouTube on pretty much a daily basis. And I've been watching her and I've been reading her for quite a long time now, as she really helps me to put into perspective things that are happening in our current political climate, and she connects them to things that have happened historically, and she does so in such a clear voice that just, it just exudes calm and reason and intelligence, and she's been excuse me, she's been a source of great comfort to me and just great clarity. I've been watching some videos that my friend Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads has been putting out each Thursday. Each week, Greg is reading a book about authoritarianism, and he is presenting a video on that book. And I have been inspired by Greg, by his reading and his discussion of the literature and what's happening in our world today. And I want to support his efforts, so I'm reading Heather Cox Richardson toward that end. I'm not posting. I won't be posting on Thursdays about authoritarianism or about anything happening in the political climate. Because Thursday for me is Poetry Thursday, but I certainly will be sharing my thoughts as I continue to read Heather Cox Richardson. And I talked a little bit about the book in my video on my possibilities for July, and a number of people wrote in the comments that that they had read this book, that they highly recommend this book, or that they follow Richardson on Substack or here on YouTube. So that was also was very, very encouraging. And then the other book that I just started, I'm only 10 chapters in, is the book that my live in-person book group is reading this month, and that's Frederik Bachman's newest novel, My Friends. Several of my BookTube friends have already commented that they've read this and finished it, and they highly, highly recommend it. My book group we're all emailing each other and texting each other about how much we are enjoying this. And so I'm really excited to continue with this. We'll be meeting in the middle of July. This is, so far, the story of Louisa, who is a young woman who is about to age out of the foster care system. And she goes off in search of a famous painting, a painting of the sea, but a pier overlooking the sea, which features 3 adolescents on the end of the pier. And she goes off, at least in the beginning of the novel, in search of this painting. It has a particular significance to her, and she ends up meeting the painter of the painting. And so it's both the story of Louisa and it's also the story of this painter and the 3 friends that are depicted on the end of the pier. So much more to come about this, but so far it's a hit for me, and I'm enjoying it very much. And then the last book that I just wanted to talk briefly about is a book that I received in the mail just the other day, and this is a book written by our booktuber and poet of great note, David Novak, and his channel is David Novak Writes Poetry, and this is Against Fascism, Poems of Resistance and of Dissent. And those of you who follow David know that he has been writing poetry and reading his own poetry for the last several months, all about what is happening in the world today and in our country. And he has published that collection. Several people on BookTube have been talking about this book and have been reading from it, and I wanted to share this as well. You can find out about purchasing this book, if that's something that interests you, on David Novak's channel. And I'll put a link to his channel in my notes below. So that's what I've read and what I'm about to be reading so far as we enter into July, which is just filled with wonderful reading events, including the continuation of Summer of Steinbeck, Rocket Summer, which I will be co-hosting, Private Eye in July, a brand new reading event that I'm really excited about, and of course, our beloved Jane Austen in July. And several of the things that I'm reading will also count for the big books of summer, which I've been participating in as well. So that's what I've been up to this week, and that's what's coming in the weeks ahead. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.